actually have one of the persons who carried that casket here, Hubert Clark. Okay.
All right.
And Hubert was, after the military, a New York police detective, too. And so, Hubert Clark.
When I was in the military, I was assigned to the United States Navy Honor Guard. And part of my job was the responsibility of training and carrying out military funerals. My last funeral in Washington, D.C. was John F. Kennedy. When we put the bronze casket into the ambulance, we shadowed it all the way to Bethesda Naval Hospital. At no time did that motorcade stop because we were going at a high rate of speed. We were in a helicopter and we shadowed it. Now there, at a point in time at Bethesda, we left the ambulance for approximately 15 minutes. After the autopsy was done, the president was transferred to a mahogany casket, which was 1,300 pounds, and the 6 of us couldn't carry it. And the president was in that casket, all right, because we placed him in the casket in the morgue. After 51 and a half years, this gentleman right here, Phil Singer, brought the casket team and the gentleman that worked in the morgue together. And as I told you, we had no idea who was on the inside of the morgue and who was on the outside of the morgue. But when we came together, which the government didn't expect, because when we left Washington, I went overseas to embassy duty, the other guys went to Asia, somebody else went to Africa, so we never had an opportunity to sit down together as a group and talk about the experience. But when we came together in February of this year, he'd never told us that we were going to tell a story. He just said, I wanted to have a reunion with you guys. Now, nobody had spoken to each other in 51 years. But as we told our story about Andrews Air Force Base, Bethesda Naval Hospital, what we were so proud to do, and then it was time for the corpsman in the morgue to tell their story. And they started out by saying, we don't mean to dispute what you're saying, but a half an hour before you got here, we took a silver shipping casket out of a black hearse and we brought it into the morgue and we set it on the floor and we removed the president's body that was wrapped in sheets and we placed it on the table. Now you can imagine the almost fight that we had in terms of who was lying to who. But they politely said, we're not disputing what you did, we're merely telling you what we did. Now these are corpsmen, these are enlisted men. They have no reason to lie. But it was at that time where we all began to look at each other and said, what was the purpose? The man was dead. And you heard Jim Jenkins talk about not finding any fragmentation, not finding any trace evidence. Well, that's what a cop like me would look for. So it simply meant to us that the body had already been sanitized, that it made us stop before it got to Bethesda Naval Hospital. And what you didn't know that we found out, that I found out, at the time the autopsy was taking place, we had an opportunity to look in, to go in and view this, and I refused to go in, but I did take a peek. And one of the things that I could see from the waist up was that there was a chalk block under the president's neck. And I never forgot it, because for me, it looked like the president was sleeping. In when I got out of the military in 1966, I became a New York City detective. And one time, to the visit to the morgue, I walked in, and I started smiling, and my partner said, "What are you smiling for in the morgue?" And I said, "That's what I saw under the president's neck." And it wasn't until I came to Chicago and, quote unquote, saw the official pictures of the president's autopsy, I said, that's not what I saw. And if you remember what Jim Jenkins said, because he was in the morgue that night, he said, "We don't even have that at Bethesda Naval Hospital." Thank you.